You have all these different forms. You have seawater. You have regular water.
So the point is, people are trying to make themselves very cold. I love how much you're laughing about it.
It's so absurd.
This is Generation Health. Every week we bring you the latest in news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices helping you live a better life longer. To my right, Dante DiMatteo, registered pharmacist, certified strength and conditioning specialist. Don't talk. This is my turn. Now it's your turn. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm having a great day. And across from me, Joey DiMatteo, registered pharmacist, board certified clinical nutritionist. Good
How
morning.
are you?
Yeah, I'm still good.
Good.
I'm Tyler Andrews. I'm your host. And today we are going to talk about a bunch of stuff. Pharmacies are cutting hours. We got some interesting stuff about cryotherapy that I don't want to talk about, but we're going to. And then we've got questions from you. But first, the most important question, if you could meet any historical figure, who would you meet? And you can't say Jesus.
Yeah, I had Jesus on there.
Nope.
I put that was too obvious. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I guess he's not an historical figure yet, but he obviously is on his way. Would be Elon Musk. I would probably put him at number one.
He's historically consequential.
Yeah. So I thought maybe that could count. Looking back, obviously you have to assume that there's no language barrier. That you'd have like United Nations style, like headphones on or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought Leonardo da Vinci. I just think somebody that's, what they call him, a polymath. Like he's an expert in so many different things, engineering, sculpting, general science, painting. I mean, it'd be so incredibly good at all of them. I just think it would be fascinating to talk to and be around.
Yeah.
You know? So I probably put him as like historical, but overall, I think just because I feel like I'd have more interest, I would have more pertinent questions and but just him being modern, I'd probably go with Elon Musk.
That's a good question. I like that. That's a good answer. Dante.
I would say, yeah, similarly, I would go back super far to like an Aristotle or Socrates, just because that's, you know, not something that I'm, you know, reading every single day, but they've obviously played such a massive role in, you know, why we think the way we think and all the stuff that all the philosophy related topics and whatnot. That would be interesting.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And then I would say for fun, it would still be like someone like Tupac.
Oh yeah.
Honestly. Someone who made such a large impact in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was polarizing in good ways and bad ways. And, you know, it would have been intriguing to hear what went through his head through different stages of his career.
I think that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't think about this one. And now that I'm sitting here going, oh man, who would I say? I think both of those answers are really good. Da Vinci, Aristotle, Plato, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, any of the founding fathers. I
thought about that too, for sure.
It'd be really fun to be like, hey, so did you mean this when you said this? Because that's how we took it, you know? Like, I think that would be fascinating to see how many situations you fill the founding fathers in on what's going on, and they go.
I was just gonna say if you could pull them like ahead in time, and
like
I don't know how it would
probably
fit.
just have like heart attacks as soon as you started telling them anything.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think there would be a lot of situations that they would start laughing, and then they'd be like, "Wait, you're serious? You're actually doing what?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and there was I remember, I think it was Joe Rogan made the joke about the founding fathers going, wait, I wrote that with a feather and you haven't updated that yet? You know, that was pretty funny too. But, oh gosh, I don't know. I would say Martin Luther would be fascinating.
Yeah.
St. Augustine would be fascinating. Any of those big philosopher.
Marcus Aurelius.
Yes. How incredible to talk to somebody like that.
The generals, like even George Washington, but Ulysses S. Grant. I was going to say somebody like Grant or somebody like that, or even somebody that just led during wartime, like Winston Churchill. But I just don't know if I would have enough questions, especially the generals, if I would be able to ask the right questions to bring out all they know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't
bring like a military person with
exactly. You have to bring like an advisor. Exactly.
It would be kind of funny to get into one of those situations and start talking to that person, and then you get off of their area of expertise, the thing they're known for, and you start talking about like food or kids or whatever, and you find out that they're a complete nincompoop. They don't know anything about anything else. You know, they know all about philosophy, but when it comes to, you know, biology,
day-to-day work or
whatever,
day-to-day life even. Yeah.
I don't know how to tie my shoes. Oh, okay, cool.
I've never seen shoelaces before though.
That's fair. All right. That's fair.
Tell us before we move on. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on here.
This?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. This is my answer for the philosophical thing.
Excited.
Joey was ready to pull that one out.
Yes.
Okay. So it's very long story, very short. My facial hair changes on the regular, if you haven't noticed. I was shaving down the beard, and I went to do my standard mustache and goatee that I usually do. And then it hit me that I had just finished reading The Three Musketeers.
Oh, wow.
So Alexander Dumas would be a pretty fun, stop it. A pretty fun guy to talk to. I was like, yeah, let's rock the, oh my gosh, what's this called? The Van Dyke for a minute, you know? So I tried it.
From The Three Musketeers.
And it's
I
not
couldn't
so bad.
place it, but now when you say that, I can just picture it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
All right. That's enough silliness. Let's get to the important things that people want to talk about. Mark asked through Facebook, let's see, what did he say here? Is delayed stomach emptying always gastroparesis? That's a kind of wide open question. It seems that way to me. I don't know anything about gastroparesis or stomach emptying. Help us out.
Yeah, I would definitely be curious as to, you know, what sparked the question.
Yeah.
You know, it might just shed a little light and help guide our answer a little better. But just by definition, delayed gastric emptying is gastroparesis for all intents and purposes. So,
it's just kind of the definition.
Yeah. Now, to the extent at
is that
which,
like saying is having a small height always being short?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Again, yes, just by definition, delayed gastric emptying would be considered gastroparesis. Context matters here, and also the extent to which this is causing symptoms also matters. So there's going to be varying levels of gastroparesis that can be occurring, and maybe a little less severe as it's developing in somebody. But again, the interesting spin here, and this is not necessarily where this conversation will go, but we've talked a lot about the GLP-1 agonists in the, you know, which are the commonly used weight loss and diabetes medications.
Yeah.
One of the ways in which they work so well is by delaying gastric emptying.
Okay.
And so when you have it in
by inducing gastroparesis?
That's what it sounds like. I don't want to, God forbid, spin this the wrong way, but I just find that fascinating. So, like in my mind, somebody is taking Ozempic, they're reading about how it works, and then they read that it says it delays gastric emptying. Maybe they're a nurse, maybe they have a background in healthcare, and they're like, "Oh crap, this sounds like gastroparesis. Is this what's happening?"
Effects.
Yeah, this is inducing gastroparesis. This is how this medication works. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but in discussing what actually is occurring with gastroparesis, it'll make sense as to why the GLP-1 agonists work to decrease hunger, to decrease appetite. And even early on, when you start taking a GLP-1, why you have some of the side effects that people really complain about: the nausea, the vomiting, the headache, the really intense feelings of fullness. And you're like, this sounds a little bit like gastroparesis. But again, that's not, we can try to put that in this neat little box,
right?
But it's a little bit too difficult. Those side effects could be coming from other mechanisms at play with the drug. So I digress there.
So in direct answer to Mark's question, is delayed stomach emptying always gastroparesis? The answer is yes. Technically it is, but there are levels and variations. And then you're extrapolating from that question why he would be asking that and thinking that maybe this has something to do with it.
Yeah, potentially. And again, it's fun how we can sort of tie things together. Again, we talk about GLP-1s a lot. They're all over social media. They're all over medical literature. They're in the news now. There's shortages at every pharmacy for them. So this might only strike somebody who's extra curious medically.
Right.
But again, it just was I thought was an interesting tie-in.
Yeah, and I think so too. I'm sorry. But
No, you're
I
good.
think so too regarding the question itself is in pharmacy, I think we're so used to people asking one question, but really wanting to know something different. And like the start of the conversation, you're kind of answering that, but you're also like,
yeah,
well, what do you really?
What's the real question?
Then the real
here?
question is like comes a minute or two later once like you've unpacked some of the periphery. So I feel like this person has a deep, like Dante's saying, there's some other level of a question here that he wants to ask. And we don't know exactly what that is. And I think that's a good inference, again, especially just with how pertinent those drug medications are right now.
Okay.
But it is nice though too in this podcast setting, it does allow us to, when Joey and I review these questions ahead of time, it's like because of the open-ended nature, Joey views it in one light and answers it one way. Tyler looks at it another way and assumes the conversation might go here, and then I see it totally different. So it does. Yeah. It provides color for the conversation, but it does make it hard sometimes to answer somebody directly.
Sure.
It's like you want to understand the motivation that's behind the whole thing.
Yes.
So I guess we can
go ahead.
Keep rolling.
What causes gastroparesis in normal circumstances if you're not taking Ozempic or one of these GLP-1 inhibitors?
So a little bit of background, I guess. In normal conditions, peristalsis is occurring, and that's the involuntary contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscles in the GI tract. And that's ultimately what helps move food from the top to bottom, so to speak. When somebody has been determined to have GP or gastroparesis, this mechanism is slowed or weakened.
Okay. So you're saying food doesn't travel down because of gravity. There's muscles literally pushing it down as you eat. And peristalsis is the slowing of that action.
The peristalsis is basically just like you can just think of it as like rhythmic contractions.
Okay.
And it's helping to basically pack the food or the food contents together to ship it
further down the gut.
Yes, and make it a little bit more easy, help it more easily make it to where it's supposed to go.
Okay.
So ultimately what happens when this mechanism is impaired in something like gastroparesis, the food or liquid that's supposed to make it down into the small intestines gets held up, for some extra time. It's in the stomach for much longer than normal. And this buildup is what ultimately then causes somebody to maybe feel a little bit full, notice just some stomach irritation. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't even really have to be a lot of food. Yeah. It's just that sensation of stuff kind of getting stuck that's often contributing to these initial side effects. And because the food is not making it to the small intestines where the majority of, nutrient absorption starts to occur, people with this condition, that's when eventually you'll see malabsorptive problems start to occur. They're not, absorbing and breaking down certain vitamins and minerals. They're starting to lose weight, and all sort of hallmarks as to how serious this can be.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Is there anything in particular that causes this in normal circumstances that people can be aware of? Definitely.
There's a fairly complicated sort of pathophysiology here, at play. There's a lot of the cases, actually most commonly, upwards of 30 to 50% of people, it's idiopathic, or, there's no kind of real hard and fast determination.
We don't know what's causing it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, almost half of people that's what's underlying this.
You're saying half of people that have this condition, it's idiopathic, not that 50% of the population is dealing with this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes. Of all of the cases.
Got it.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what's causing it, you can't fix the underlying issue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that stinks.
And then from there, I mean, that's ultimately how a lot of the treatments work, which we can talk about, Joey can talk about, or whatever. You're just managing the symptoms. But before we get there, there's some other major sort of causes here at play. So individuals with viral or bacterial infections, especially those that affect the GI tract, they have maybe a little bit more of a predisposition to this occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
Diabetes is a huge factor. Why GP occurs is interesting and maybe a little bit convoluted, but it's thought to be that the neuropathy that often develops with, in diabetes because of, sometimes the difficulty in managing blood sugar and that whole cascade of effects.
Sure.
That can, once that leads to the neuropathy, that neuropathy and nerve damage then affects the nerves that are specific to the stomach, which then alters that normal peristalsis that's supposed to occur. So with diabetes, you typically hear, peripheral neuropathy, the tingling of the feet and the hands, pain and that sort of thing. Well, there's also more of this central issue of nerve damage that can occur, like directly affecting like the vagus nerve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then just a couple others to hit. Medications. It's a common side effect of a, laundry list of medications. Narcotic pain relievers are big. Tricyclic antidepressants. There are certain blood pressure medications like nifedipine and diltiazem, which are calcium channel blockers. Clonidine, dopamine agonists, lithium, nicotine, marijuana, or just the THC component specifically.
Wow.
We could kind of keep rolling through those, but that's just a, quick and dirty there. And then finally, this will make sense. Anybody who's had any sort of stomach surgery, they're at risk to this occurring because of essentially the nerve damage that can occur from kind of cutting your way through tissue in a major surgery. And then ultimately this vagal nerve damage is just impairing the way that the brain and the GI tract are communicating.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So this can happen for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
What's the solution? Is it medications?
Yeah.
Always?
So, these will speak mainly to idiopathic cases. Because we're going to assume that if you're dealing with some of these symptoms, you've analyzed some of your meds. Again, like Dante said, especially opiates and anticholinergic drugs can be anything from like Benadryl to medications used to treat overactive bladder.
Wow.
Anything that's kind of drying to the body can cause that. So I think that's key to analyze the medications. Then also, yes, it's linked to diabetes very strongly. But we're still talking largely about uncontrolled diabetes.
Yeah.
So once you get under control, hopefully, then that is something that, not that the nerve repairs, et cetera, but that hopefully you come out of that once the diabetes is controlled, whether it's type 1 or type 2. Yeah. Okay. So again, we'll speak to kind of more to the idiopathic, but also, basically if you're just in the throes of it, dealing with it. So at the most central level, some of this will sound a little obvious, but chew your food very well. The more that you can digest the food before it starts going down, then, in your mouth, saliva. So the longer you chew it, the more you physically break it down, easier on the peristalsis mechanism. So therefore you avoid foods. There are certain foods you kind of feel like you never really chew up well. And they're kind of going down in chunks, for lack of a better way. Nuts and seeds. Popcorn, corn itself, kind of always have that outer shell that's hanging around, and even broccoli. Things that, again, just aren't chewed real well. Eat smaller, more frequent meals, 2 to 3 hours apart. You're just giving your body the best chance to move the food along, and also just, again, less at one time to prevent some of the issues that occur with the nausea, with the GERD, all those things that can occur, that real feeling of fullness, etc. Unfortunately, some of these things are healthy. You avoid meats, especially like beef and red meats. Okay.
Yeah.
Avoid fiber though, which is tough.
Really?
Yeah. Especially insoluble fiber. So like whole wheats, whole grains, your green leafies, carrots, those things that are insoluble that just pass.
Yeah.
Your body has your normal body, great for you.
Yeah.
Body that's not passing things well. The last thing you want is something that can't be digested.
Something that's even more bulk forming.
Yes. Bulk forming is a great way to put it. So soluble fibers.
Hit that again.
Yeah.
So for a normal person, if you're not dealing with gastroparesis, eat fiber, eat insoluble fiber.
Yep.
That's good for you. You probably need more of that in your diet.
Yes, we all do.
If you are dealing with gastroparesis and stomach not emptying properly because of medications that you're on or any number of other reasons, in that case, you might want to avoid as much
avoid the insoluble. Soluble fiber is okay. Because again, that just by the definition of the word is dissolvable in water. So your body's going through more of a normal digestion process with soluble fiber.
Okay.
Things like certain fruits and oats. So, don't count oats in that kind of whole grain. Oats are fine. And then also
like fiber that you would mix up in water, the supplements.
That's typically insoluble.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's more bulk forming.
Well, there you go.
So, and then again, some of this is just kind of common sense once you think about it, but pureed foods, soups, if you can eat pureed fruit, cooked vegetables, not raw vegetables, anything to make the digestion process a little easier. So oats, a very good healthy thing where you still can get some fiber.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Mashed potatoes, all those kind of things. So, juices, should be fine as well. But in general, eat smaller protein portions, but especially you're really concerned about red meat. And I think, we'll get to that this more in like the supplement end, but protein shakes, though, I still think are a good thing.
Yeah.
That protein is pretty easily digested. It's already in liquid form versus having to break down a steak or something.
Sure.
And the other benefit of the daily protein shakes is you're assuming that you're cutting down on meat. You're assuming you're cutting down on things, food in general.
Right.
You're probably eating a lot less, et cetera. So getting in, one scoop of a protein shake, I think it's going to be beneficial in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's also some things out there about the low FODMAP diet. We've talked about before. You're kind of eliminating those short chain carbs that can be difficult to digest. Beans, legumes, corn, seeds, and nuts, kind of in that family. There's obviously some overlap there with what we talked about before. They can irritate the stomach a little bit, just because of their physical structure.
So that's worth looking into as
Definitely.
well. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it sounds like there's kind of levels that we can go into that of, if I'm dealing with this right now, maybe I start by eating less protein, especially red meat, and smaller meals, more spread apart, and doing some of those simpler things. If that's not working, maybe then I step it up to a low FODMAP diet.
Yes.
And if that's not working,
you can step up to a medication.
Okay.
Metoclopramide is really kind of the standard that's used, except if you're over 65. They do not recommend use. You can get some side effects from it. It's a dopamine blocker, so it can mimic some issues of low dopamine, which have Parkinson's-like effects. You can get something like tardive dyskinesia, uncontrolled movements of the face and upper limbs. Not common under 65, but just something you want to watch out for. And then again, if you are at that age, that's where kind of the cutoff has been in terms of use. So it literally is working on the contractility and the peristalsis that Dante talked about, and also the resting tone in the gut. So that improves gastric emptying. That's kind of the gold standard from a medication end to actually work on the contractility itself. Mirtazapine is also used. It hits serotonin receptors in the gut. Some benefit there. Erythromycin is an antibiotic, but it also helps. But it's interesting kind of effect. It only works for a couple weeks. So it would be something more transient that you maybe do after you coming off of a medication or something that was causing it. Yeah, after a few weeks does not work.
Okay.
Supplements, there's a few different angles. Ginger can help with the nausea. Nothing to do with the direct issue, but the side effect that's very common is nausea. So ginger can be of benefit there for sure.
Yeah.
A multivitamin, a multimineral. Again, not treating the gastroparesis, but we're assuming you're going to have some malabsorption from what you are eating, and you're going to have more of a limited and poor diet,
right?
Because of the physical limitation of gastroparesis. So it's definitely time where the importance of a multivitamin and multimineral, both, I would recommend that you'd step up to that, and the importance of that goes up. Lastly, though, something we have them all combined in a product called Superzymes, but betaine hydrochloride. It actually is hydrochloric acid. So if you are getting a lot of acid reflux, stay away from that one.
Okay.
But it also includes enzymes like papain, bromelain. They're prokinetic. They aid in digestion. And then it also contains actual enzymes, amylase, lipase, and protease. Amylase breaks down carbs, lipase breaks down fats, protease breaks down protein. So you're actually helping the digestion process in the gut. You may not be deficient in those things, but just adding that, complex of things together have all been shown to help. Just if you do need to do that, it's one or two right with a meal. Start with one for a few days, with each meal, but they've got to be in your gut while the food is. This is not something you absorb and then it's in your body and it works. It's something that
you take it with the meal or before the meal,
right before, during, or right after. You just want it in your gut while the food is, because it's literally going to be helping to break down and to stimulate digestion at that point. You taking it an hour after you eat, or more pertinently 2 or 3 hours after you eat, it's going to kind of pass, and digestion, at least from the gut process is pretty much done, and you're getting very limited, if any, benefit.
And that's the Superzymes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You're really, again, looking at the papain, bromelain, amylase, lipase, protease, all those ingredients. The betaine hydrochloride, just again, be careful if you are getting some significant acid reflux.
Cool.
Just be aware of that.
Okay. Well, that may be more than Mark wanted to know, but there's the answer.
Try to make it apply to more than just the question, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have something else?
Just like literally one more thing to add. If just like as a take home for purely safety measures, like if you were noticing symptoms like this, the really increased fullness, the nausea, the vomiting, fullness after very small meals, doctors will often firstly, they're going to roll out some sort of mechanical blockage or obstruction.
Yeah.
And so that's critical. Like
good point.
That sort of thing will mimic, gastroparesis, but it is important to know that we, ultimately you want to roll out something that's a little more life-threatening up front.
Sure.
Which can mimic
that makes sense.
These symptoms.
That makes sense. All right. Well, next up, I saw a bunch of articles about this, and by the time folks are seeing this, it will already be affecting them. This says Walmart and CVS are cutting pharmacy hours. Pharmacy hours at Walmart and CVS will be reduced starting in March, so already passed, as the major retailers continue to deal with a nationwide shortage of pharmacy staff. Walmart confirmed to Axios that its pharmacy will close at 7 p.m., which is 2 hours earlier than the current closing time of 9 p.m. Weekend hours will stay the same, the company said. CVS will cut its shift hours at about 2/3 of its roughly 9,000 U.S. locations. Workforce retention and burnout have been a huge problem across every segment of healthcare, particularly amid the Great Resignation and the stressors of the pandemic, Axios' Tina Reed reports. A summer 2022 survey by the National Community of Pharmacists Association found that 76% of independent community pharmacies, that'd be you guys, were having a, quote, difficult time, unquote, filling staff. And I saw similar articles, not about that exact same thing, also including Walgreens. There was Pharmacy Times was talking about it. CBS was talking about it. CBS had a quote from Walmart saying that they were doing it to help improve work-life balance for their associates. And then a spokesman from Walgreens, the second largest U.S. chain, also said that it had to adjust pharmacy hours over the past 12 months due to staffing shortages. That's a big deal when all of the major retailers are doing it. Has this affected you guys?
It's interesting. They're kind of doing it together, though.
Yeah, it's probably... They kind of went, well, all right, since they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and how are we affected, honestly?
Yeah.
Slightly positively. I'm not saying we've had like direct people come in because of it.
Right.
But being an independent pharmacy, like most are, our hours are a little shorter. They're meant to be run by individual pharmacist owners, et cetera. So the hours are shorter for us and vast majority of independents across the country. So we're sometimes behind the 8 ball a little bit in that way. So seeing now our hours are almost the same.
Yeah.
It's a benefit. Now we get around that a little bit. We offer home delivery, charge accounts, credit cards on file, auto filling, just personal touch on things. So we definitely get around the hours thing, but it's only kind of been helpful to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is definitely not related to drug shortages. That's a big issue, but does not affect, I mean, if anything, honestly, sometimes the shortages make more work. Because you're talking to a doctor about changing the drug, changing a dose, explaining it to patients, trying to get it from other sources. Honestly, the shortages, if anything, have caused more work than just filling the script like normal and it's on your shelf. So not that it's not so much a pharmacist shortage. It's really a technician shortage.
Okay.
It's a shortage of pharmacy technicians, and it's because they're overworked. I mean, quite honestly, pharmacy business, us to some extent, but we try to staff better for our own sanity and for the sanity of people that we work with and been with us for years. But a lot of them runs very short staffed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of burnout related to that. Because I saw that
the work-life balance.
Yes. The technicians are underpaid in a lot of cases and they're overworked.
I was just going to say, it seems like, I mean, those big box places are always understaffed because staffing is your number one expense. Mm-hmm. So they always try to run lean.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's what was interesting too, when they say this is to help work-life balance. Well, people still need their medications. So now you've got 2 hours less to fill them. If their day was crazy before, now they've got 2 hours less. Those last 2 hours are probably a little quieter. Where they're kind of catching up on some things, maybe things that aren't getting picked up that day. Now they lose that. So I think if anything, hey, 2 hours at home is probably worth it, and they would trade that they would make. But it's going to make their hard days potentially only harder, I think, the actual days themselves.
But it's not affecting you guys directly in terms of having trouble staffing or anything like that. You guys haven't had to cut hours?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to say. We're because there's 2 stores that we're having to keep adequately staffed versus, however many branches of these large companies. So from that perspective, like from a numbers game, we've been lucky not to have to go out and hire so many people, but also kind of what Joey said at the outset, like we've had very loyal people from day one, and we probably just have lower tech turnover than normal. So thank you to all of our peeps. So that's been helpful, obviously. And then also, like Joey said, just to reiterate, the hours are huge. Yeah. They reduced their hours to basically what our operating hours already are. Yeah. Right. So it's just been like, okay, the people are figuring, well, if Rite Aid's open until 6 and the medicine shop's open until 6, I'm just going to go see my boys at the medicine shop, boys and girls.
Do it. Do it. Speaking beyond the Oakmont and Pittsburgh area, because obviously anybody listening to this is already coming to you guys. That's without question. But what's the solution? I mean, just online pharmacies? I mean, what you're talking about is right. There's X number of prescriptions that need to be filled. 330 million Americans. If they need a prescription, that doesn't change because the hours at Walmart changed. So what's the solution if there's not enough people and people are burnt out?
I guess it's one of those things like, from a patient standpoint, maybe I'm underselling it because, again, we functioned at a 6 o'clock close time since the beginning. Yeah. But I don't really think it's really much more harmful to patients. A 7 to 9 window. I know some people work late, etc. For us, anyway, we deliver things. Some other pharmacies do. Yeah. So we say, hey, I'm working late today. I'm not getting home till 6:30. We can have that delivered to you. So I'm sure there are some people that the work pickup times could be affected, but hopefully with the autofills and things like that, it's okay. So that would really be the only problem I can see here is literally that 7 to 9 pickup window. And online pharmacy, I mean, again, bias is going to show here. And to be quite honest, if you're getting, you take one thyroid med and it's every 90 days and you have an appointment once a year, is doing an online pharmacy something that we think is bad or that you're missing out on something? I can't really say that. Right. But yes, whenever you're getting elderly and you need maybe a little bit of help keeping things together or understanding why the copays have changed, or you're going on vacation and your medication's not due for 10 more days. So you don't want to get it filled in Florida. What do you do? Like all those things, we problem solve all those things for people and keep people in line a little easier. So I think the more meds you're on and the older you get, there's just a higher need for problem solving in those cases and for accommodating. You're out of refills, those kind of things. We give you a little supply, all those things that we do to try to make sure that, we're solving the problems. You're just not going to get in an online pharmacy. You're going to talk to somebody different literally every time you call. Right. You're going to be 3 or 4 days away from meds. Yep. So you're still going to have to go to a local pharmacy for that antibiotic or for, those acute meds. They can't solve that. They can't do controlled substances. So, refrigerated items, which is more and more common with not only insulins, but all those GLP-1s, all those Ozempics we've talked about, are all refrigerated. They're all high end. And yes, they figure that out to an extent, but there's always just going to be occasional losses and lapses. And again, then you're kind of fending for yourself out there, calling and trying to talk to FedEx corporate and the online pharmacy. So, I mean, all those things. And the online pharmacy, I'm kind of lumping it with mail order, treating them the same way. That's really what we're talking about here as of now anyway. I mean, the other is the Amazon and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say that's, my kind of summation of the online pharmacy.
And we already talked about it. If you're on Ozempic or one of those things, there are side effects that you might not realize right at first and that you need to troubleshoot with a real live human down the road. And if you're doing it through a faceless organization online, they don't know your situation. They don't know your condition.
You also is maybe less likely to call. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you know somebody and you know the pharmacist and you trust them and you kind of know you're bothering them or whatever, they're busy, but still like, them and you've been a customer there, you don't mind calling. Hopefully, we lower those barriers for people too, who don't want to make that call, who just Google or whatever,
Good. Well, I'm glad that that is not an issue for you guys. Very cool.
It'd be only a benefit, right?
That's right. Lily emailed to ask, do women with no family history over the age of 45 really need a mammogram every year? I'm a dedicated customer. Thank you, Lily. Okay, so what's the standard recommendation for mammograms? Is it every year?
That is part of the problem. And again, just kind of as an overall brush, when we're talking about a screening for such a serious disease, it's very difficult to be on air at any point or, publishing something that's telling somebody to get screened less than somebody else told them to.
Yep.
So just to start with that's always immediately kind of the first thing on mind is like, whoa, like that's a tougher question. It's a great question.
Yeah.
Very pertinent question. And I'm going to, try to throw out some things that can help her make her decision, but it's not something that I personally would be comfortable like stamping with anything less than that.
And
do you know what I mean?
I can say
somebody else has told her that.
Personal level, my mom died at 51
oh my God,
from advanced stage 4 breast cancer. So
wow,
I know exactly what you're saying. Mm-hmm. This is not something you want to play with.
Definitely.
So that being said.
Yeah. So what age did she use? 45?
Yeah, she was 45.
So technically the American College of Radiology and the American Cancer Society, they have the same recommendation. Yearly screening starting at 40.
Okay.
So even slightly more aggressive than that. Then there have been these organizations, honestly, I've never really heard of them, but there's a European Cancer Observatory, and then us two in North America use the same term, a U.S. Preventative Services Task Force. And then there's a Canadian Task Force on Preventative Healthcare. Both of those organizations much more lax in terms of their recommendations. They recommend, so we'll start with the U.S. one, this was from 2016, every 2 years between the ages of 50 to 74. After 74, they don't really see benefits of
after
screening.
74? Okay.
Yeah. So they're 10 years later and they're every other year for the US task force. The Canadian and the European agree very similarly, every 2 to 3.
Okay.
From 50 to 69. So, it's something you can easily, so for those are very different recommendations.
Those are very different recommendations.
So the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force has been criticized. They did not have any oncologists on the board, directly relating to cancer. And they had some insurance industry representation there.
Okay.
So it's everything with U.S. organizations. There's a potential for some bias and influence.
Yeah. So maybe discount what they're saying a little bit.
But then on the other hand, if you're a member of the American Cancer Society or radiology, where the more screening is done, the more, yes, cancer is such a critical, my God, life-saving thing to detect, but that's also your total focus.
Right.
Why would you ever approach what another organization that's maybe got a different bias, let alone maybe a more objective look at it?
Right.
How could you ever think that you'd be equal to them?
So, all right. So setting aside the money factor here for a second, what are the objections to screening? I've never had a breast exam, so I understand they're not comfortable. Is that the biggest thing?
That's certainly one of them. Let's just go down a couple things. There can be unnecessary surgeries, and they term it anxiety, with the risk with more frequent mammograms.
Really?
Yeah. Essentially, there is a pretty significant amount of false positives, 15%.
Okay.
So pretty significant. Okay. And that's where they get the anxiety from. And also then over treatment. And then furthermore, there are, I couldn't find a percentage, but there are significant cases of breast cancers that are not harmful, that are not going to lead to any true malignancy or any side effects or, God forbid, mortality.
Sure.
And they're being treated with chemotherapeutics, with radiation, et cetera.
Okay.
So that's where they do step in. Because, first thought is, well, what's the downside? Like that, you asked the perfect question that I had.
Why wouldn't you want to do this?
That's why. So because the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force phrasing is the benefits of screening mammography outweighs the harms by at least a moderate amount. So they're rolling with the fact that there's harms, but from women 50 to 74, and is greatest for women in their 60s. So there's that. That's probably the main thing. also the literal discomfort of the compression of the breast. There's also radiation. People are going to be more sensitive to that, you know, in terms of how much that bothers them. The amount has been quantified.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how accurately, but I saw it in 2 different sources. The radiation dose that you get in one mammography is the amount that you get in 7 weeks of normal day-to-day life. So 7 weeks worth of typical radiation, whatever amount the average person is exposed to, you get in one sitting, so to say.
Okay.
7 weeks worth.
That's not nothing.
It's not nothing. It's also not like outrageous.
Right.
I don't know how to quantify that, but that's, I mean, how to qualify that. That's the quantities there. But, so that's the other end is certainly, you know, radiation concern. You know, but there is no evidence that the actual compression leads to any type of cancer. That's floated out there, but there's no evidence of that. It's obviously, you know, uncomfortable, but
the American Cancer, I just looked up, the American Cancer Society says that an X-ray has about the same amount of radiation as normal people are exposed to over 10 days.
10 days.
So if a mammogram is 7 weeks, that's more than an X-ray. That's a lot.
Yeah. And I believe it's because the amount of X-ray.
Oh,
It's not like a one-shot deal. They're taking pictures of different angles. So it's a collection of X-rays.
Got it. Okay.
I'm not an expert on what the actual procedure is, but that would be my understanding. So there were a couple individual groups. I don't know if they were related or not, but doctors Keen and Keen, they tried to analyze studies and use statistical analysis to measure. I'm not gonna get too technical with this, but they essentially are saying that starting at age 50, repeated mammography saves 1.5 lives over 15 years for every 1,000 women. Again, you take that what you will. That was their conclusion, because they're really trying to compare how many women died, but also how many women died of other causes around that time. What's the actual difference? Not just raw numbers of how many died from breast cancer, but what's the relative change of. So that's, again, there's more statistical things I'm kind of deciding not to go into here, but that was the gist of it. So there are the other ways they're putting it. For a woman in the screening subset of mammography detectable cancers, less than a 5% chance that the mammography will save her life. They're essentially saying that she would have a symptom and she would go in, and that treatments are better now, and the chances that her knowing earlier versus her knowing once a symptom was found is 5%.
For 95% of women, it's not going to make any difference.
That's what they're saying. Yeah.
As the person most affected in the room.
Yeah.
Whoop-de-doo. That doesn't help my mom. She was in that 5%. But I understand. Yeah. Statistically speaking, 95%. Okay. So what are there any alternatives? Is there anything other than mammography that locate? I mean, I know you can do breast exams, self-breast exams, but that's not looking into the tissue.
Yeah, that's the concern. There's digital and 3D mammograms now. They're becoming more common because they're very highly priced. There's less radiation use. So if radiation is your main concern, they still have to kind of get the pictures in the same way from what I read, you know, the compression, those kind of things, but there's less radiation because of the source of how they're, you know, actually, you know, getting the pictures.
All right.
Thermography is not a substitute. You know, I couldn't find anything that I would be comfortable with rolling to say that thermography is a substitute. Now, if you're with all this data and if your decision is you're not going to do a mammography X amount of time, then doing thermography is better than nothing.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying there? Like, I'm not saying it's a substitute, but if you've already decided you're going to do every 3 years or whatever below the cancer, you know, ACS, then thermography in between there would be better than not doing anything.
Got it.
And then if you do come up positive, obviously the next step then is the mammogram and is, you know, the traditional. So that's really, in terms of, you know, no direct alternative. Thermography is the closest thing, and it's not a pure substitute. Just maybe just the type you can see if your insurance covers like a digital or 3D.
Fair enough. Anything else? Any other recommendations? I mean, it sounds like you're basically saying, I understand it's not comfortable, but you should probably do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a similar thing to Keen and Keen. There's a Cochrane. It's called Cochrane Collaboration. It's a British international charitable organization that is essentially trying to. They use the term facilitate evidence-based choices about health interventions.
Yeah.
So they have a lot. They do have, you know, medical practitioners on the board, and they were more similar to Keen and Keen. They're saying it's not clear whether screening does more good than harm. They were even stronger.
Okay, so there are some questions.
Yeah, according to their analysis, 1 in 2,000 women will have her life prolonged by 10 years of screening. while 10 healthy women will undergo unnecessary breast cancer treatment. So I know that's
it's a very personal question.
Exactly.
And, Lily, I'm sorry, we're not going to give you a direct answer. You just have to decide for yourself.
That's the gist of what's out there. And again, it's just going to be a very personal decision, like Tyler said.
Yeah. All right. Dante, let's talk to you for a minute. I don't want to talk about this.
Me neither.
Do you know why I don't want to talk about this?
Please, bro.
That's why. Because you're going to talk about this and I'm going to feel like, okay, fine, I'll do it. I'm already tracking my food. I'm exercising 5 times a week.
Tracking now. Wow,
I am. Now I'm going to start taking cold baths too. Dadgummit. All right. Cryotherapy, Dante. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, man. This one is just about everywhere at this point. Everybody has a friend or somebody who started taking cold showers or jumping in the river, jumping in the pool, jumping in the garbage can.
I get in the Allegheny
jumping in the river.
I don't drive across the bridges. I swim.
There's a meme that's out there. It's the guy with the crying face, and it just says, "Please, bro, please jump in the cold plunge, please. It'll only hurt for 7 minutes, bro. Please."
Yes.
And that's how I feel sometimes when I talk to a proponent of cold therapy. And so anybody who feels that strongly about anything,
misery loves company is what that is.
Clearly. Yeah. Man. So
why would you do it? Why in the world would you get in a cold shower? We have water heaters for a reason. Why am I going to take a cold shower?
Yeah, for like 1,000 years, we worked towards proper plumbing, and heated water, and then year 2000 comes around, and it's you flip the script. But so basically, all that cryotherapy is referring to are low cold temperatures that are either used locally, like an ice pack, or generally, so like a whole body sort of immersion.
Okay, so
either like a tank.
Technically, an ice pack is cryotherapy.
I guess so.
Okay,
yeah, we can consider that.
But that's not what we're talking about specifically,
right? And there's going to be some tie-ins, obviously, but just at the jump here, this is not a deep dive into specific studies that showed that this biomarker was elevated and this biomarker was decreased, and these led to that. There's not a whole lot of that here, so I think over time, because maybe a lot of people may not like what I have to say about this. Might have questions, or they have a study to share, and I'm happy to see that, but I don't have as optimistic or as an excited view on any of this that many people do.
It's
good. It's just another one of those things.
Maybe I get to take hot showers. Keep talking.
So if we look again at the specific forms, whole body cryotherapy typically is a chamber that's cold to -200 to 240 degrees Fahrenheit.
Why are you laughing so hard?
Because those ones, like, people don't have those in their house unless they're like a what are those, like the longevity biohackers?
Yes.
I had no clue it went that cold.
Those ones do. It doesn't even like make any sense.
You don't stay in the, it's not, you don't get in that for 10 minutes.
You got to live in there.
Yeah. That's it. No, those
it's like
sorts
1
of
to 3
things,
minutes.
Yeah, you're in there for a short period of time. Okay.
So that's one example. And then specifically cold water immersion, that would be like the plunge that you have out back, and the ones that you see on Instagram all the time, just a cold bath. And people typically with those are working towards 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then some other forms, especially in the, in the scientific research, you have winter swimming, you have ice swimming, you have the ice bathing, you have cold showers, you have all these different forms. You have seawater, you have regular water.
So the point is, people are trying to make themselves very cold. I love how much you're laughing about it.
It's so absurd.
So wait. All right. So why are people doing it? What is the purported benefit?
Yeah, there's a laundry list of benefits. I mean, you just name something, and I guarantee you there's something out there that says that plunging in cold will help you with. Okay. So what we can do is we can just hit a couple of these big ones.
Go for it.
And then we'll basically say why not to get too excited.
Okay.
So weight loss is one that is a purported benefit. It aids in weight loss via thermogenesis, of like literally increasing your metabolic rate, which there is some merit to that.
Right.
Another huge one is that it has protective effects against diabetes and helps with blood sugar management. Another, pretty bold claim.
There's heard that one.
There is apparently implications in cholesterol reduction, which from a biomarker perspective, and mice studies and such, there's that. It's not that this can't happen. It's just we're not there yet with a lot of this stuff.
We're making these mice cold to find out if it helps our cholesterol.
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, stress regulation. And then the mental health benefits. Yeah. And I think that's where I don't want to I don't want to mock that in any respect.
Right.
There are a lot of people, I have a lot of friends, family, a lot of very smart people on the internet who do this because of the stress benefits, because of the mental health benefits that they feel that they've received from trying this. And so who am I to sit here and say at my limited research that they're wrong and that there's no way that could have possibly benefited them.
I remember one in particular that I saw a while ago that actually got me to take cold showers for a minute. Somebody said basically, when I have the opportunity to make myself comfortable and then I willingly go into the most uncomfortable situation I can, that nothing I do today is going to be harder than what I just did. Mm-hmm. So it's easy from here on out. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It's a very like military. Yeah, it's like a very militaristic.
Yeah.
Sort of principle. And that's cool. I mean, a lot of like MMA fighters and athletes and ex-Navy SEALs, like those are the people that are advocating for this. And that's great. I mean, those people will, whoop my butt and we should probably listen to some of what they have to say. You know what I mean? It's like from a mental toughness perspective.
Sure. No but we don't need grandma to be taking cold showers because it's going to reduce her cholesterol. If it's going to have some major effect, let's talk about it. But you're saying that's probably not the case.
Right. And even for grandma, just for example, there's always the side of things. Well, man, these cold showers, not only maybe are they a little overhyped, but man, they're going to start hurting people and people are going to get hypothermia and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think that's typically what's happening out there. Like your friend like just stayed in the cold plunge too long and froze. Like I'm not so that maybe that happens.
Died.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's happening, which is terrible. That like, man, what a terrible way to like injure yourself.
It's true. That'd be a horrible way.
But then again, I do CrossFit, so there's all types of people doing CrossFit being made fun of because of their pull up style and stuff that they could hurt themselves doing. So but can't throw stones.
Lots of athletes, lots of CrossFitters, lots of folks use ice baths. I know professional athletes use ice baths for recovery. Mm-hmm. Is there legitimacy to that?
I think that's one instance that you could make the argument for that it could be useful. But at the same time, a lot of us aren't, high level athletes.
Right.
Like we don't have a morning session of cardio and then we got to, sharpen up for our, 6 p.m. session of weightlifting.
Right.
For those people, or even for the very specific window of time that I did doubles of CrossFit training, like maybe if I had time and like didn't work, I could throw in an ice bath in between those to help me for my second session or something like that. There is definitely, exercise science research looking at some of those benefits that, you might make you feel a little better going into your, your second session. But even just like a lot of the generic, my inflammation is lowered from this ice bath into my second session. It's like, dude, maybe it is a little bit lowered, but there's a million markers and things that can be affected by these like intermittent bouts of cold. Like that very well may cause transient changes.
Yeah.
But we talked about icing, like holding an ice pack onto your knee or, if you have tendonitis, something like that. It's not really lowering inflammation. That's not typically why, at least from my understanding, why we're recommending people to ice their knee with tendonitis in the moment, unless it's like a new injury or something like that. You're icing it because icing is a flat out pain reliever. Like you're getting some transient pain relief. It can help you go to the next thing. It can help you keep moving, in your day. If you have the bad knee or bad ankle or tennis elbow, those sorts of lingering instances of pain where you just kind of need something to keep you moving.
Yeah. but it's not
very useful. I don't really think there's at this point some healing property of ice.
Right.
You know, so in the same respect, potentially you could then also make the argument that why the ice bath is helping the athlete for their second session is because their body hurts
less
from a lot of training.
Yeah.
Like their body's hurting from a lot of training. Maybe it's like, oh, inflammation's lowered. Maybe, but it's probably just because you're hurting and it's going to help you relieve some pain as you go about the rest of your day into your next session of training. And then also if we want to sit here and talk about training and nitpick details, there's an equal amount of studies to the contrary showing that there are reductions in muscular size or hypertrophy from doing these prolonged, sessions of cold therapy or whatever. Huh. So like, let's just say you're the person who's very concerned about the size of their bicep growth. Tyler.
Clearly.
Yeah.
You're getting there. You're getting there, Tyler.
Oh my gosh.
So that would be one example. That would just be one small argument maybe against some of the small changes that can occur from, routinely doing cold therapy is that, hey, it might help you repair better from session to session if you're doing some high level stuff. Maybe it'll help you repair better and it may not have like a massive effect on strength performance potentially, but we do see that there's enough out there to say if you're trying to grow, the ice baths are not going to help you.
Interesting.
So it's just, I don't know. And I think that's, maybe we don't have a ton of like performance listeners out there. And that's maybe just like my current life rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But I think that, no pun intended, the cold therapy thing is like the tip of the iceberg. Like it's really one of the last things I'm worried about. Like especially with something like weight loss. Like there's 50 other levers to pull if we're going to sit here and talk about weight loss versus, the brown fat adaptation did this and now I'm going to be able to burn this many calories. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that whole brown fat Huberman thing, like the dude is 50 times smarter than I am. Maybe there is some merit to that, but at least at this point in time, there's no large randomized control trials looking at that specifically in large populations of like people receiving cold therapy in the same environment, in the same settings to show that there's some like clinical endpoint benefit to fat loss, let's say.
Right.
I think that
there are other mechanisms that have more proven
actions,
like calorie reduction or exercise.
Yeah. Or Ozempic. It's like, there's things that are out there right now that we know are cutting edge and helping. But again, and then also it's not that we just blow this off.
Right.
It's just, this is one example of the hype moving at a slightly faster rate than the research. They were close for a while and then boom, like the hype just in the age of social media, it just exploded.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a Wim Hof Huberman like hater by any means. I listen and I'm curious to what those guys have to say. It's just that like, just temper the expectations. There are some really compelling and interesting mechanistic studies on some of these markers that it might have effects on if you're interested. Individual studies, in terms of things like how did it affect weight loss? How did it affect blood sugar? How did it affect stress? How did it affect mood? And it's all there if you want to read it, and none of the studies were that great. So all that's saying is not that we can, basically we just don't have everything that we need to know to make bold claims.
Fair enough.
So but if you like doing it and you have time to do it, then you should continue to do it. If you're interested in building resilience and mental toughness, the stuff that you mentioned, then you should do it. But to act like there is hard evidence that demonstrates positive benefits to some of the things that we mentioned.
Yeah,
the
laundry list.
Yeah, it's just a little hard to do that right now. Again, much of them are based in theories. They're simply poorly designed or conducted studies. They're mechanistic data, which we talk about. So those are things like Petri dish studies, quote unquote, studies done in rodents, studies that we're not able to extrapolate to humans yet. And there's simply not enough to make the bold claims. So at this point,
you're throwing cold water on it. Pun fully intended.
And then actually, even like just thought of one more thing with recovery. Like there's even studies, even for the athletes that, they might have 2 bouts of exercise, let's say, Well, not every gym or not every place that they're having a competition or hotel, like they can't feasibly get that cold exposure that they're looking for.
Right.
And there's just enough out there to say that riding your bike, like riding, just an easy 10-minute spin on a bike as almost like at a recovery pace.
Yeah.
Kind of does the same thing.
Interesting.
So that even ties into some of the research with the cold water interventions for swimmers. Was it the swimming itself that was driving some of these changes? Was it a combination of the cold and the swimming driving the changes? Or again, is it just like the exercise?
Yeah.
And is it just this little bit of easy exercise that can help you recover better?
So it's
too
still
hard
up
to
in
say.
the air. We don't know.
I think it's very much still up in the air. But if you want to do it and you're doing all the other things, turn the shower low and just.
But the key is do the other things first.
Yeah.
Because we know more about those and we know that they work.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that's it for us. All of our products, anything that was mentioned, is available on our website. That's at askjoedimatteo.com, askjoedimatteo.com. That site is also where you can sign up for our mailing list, where you will find out when things go on sale, find past episodes of this show or the previous show that started all of this, Ask Joe DiMatteo. If you have any questions, we need to hear about them. So email us, questions@askjoedimatteo.com. Show notes are available on the video or on the audio as well. Any article that we mention is available there. So look for those if you're curious, if you want to see the studies that aren't really conclusive about cryotherapy. And if you're only listening, then you are missing the fact that there's now a camera on me and you can see my Van Dyke far more clearly than you could before. If you are listening, you're missing half the fun. Every episode is available as video on YouTube or Rumble. They're all on there. Go check them out. Generation Health is what you want to look for. Big thanks to Josiah Schweinberg, who is keeping our cameras running. Michael Deppish, the editor. Joyce Gibb, our nurse practitioner, handles private consults. Diane Silverman manages product. Terry does scheduling. Cecilia does distribution. That's Joey DiMatteo. That's Dante DiMatteo. I'm Tyler Andrews. And that's it for us. So now the question is you've been listening. Are you going to listen and enjoy, or are you going to take action and do something with what you've learned?
Please, bro. 7 minutes. It's all it takes in the cold bath.